kita kedatangan Mbak Andita Utami, or also known as Mbak Afu. How are you, Mbak Afu?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for making the trip here.
My pleasure.
Ya, so aku pertama kali ketemu Mbak Afu itu di acara where they gather Bappenas, they gather all these young leaders, inspiring young leaders untuk showcase their, showcase tapi kayak share their perspective lah.
Yeah.
Dan di sana aku langsung dikasih lihat Instagramnya Mbak Afu gitu. sama Tamara, langsung kayak you have to check this girl out. Karena aku baru pulang dari Amerika gitu kan, so I haven't really gotten my foot on the ground. Ternyata you have to meet these like inspiring role models juga.
I was actually as well baru balik dari Amerika
baru
benar. Just a few months.
Right,
S2, yes.
And that aku kayak ada identity crisis. Karena when he came back, kan dulu for the longest time I was a student, so people like, oh what do you do? Oh aku mahasiswa gitu kan. Terus that was the first event, yang semuanya nanyain what do you do? And I'm like, oh aku baru lulus gitu kan. Tapi I love what Mbak Afu calls herself, economic storyteller of the environment, right? Could you share what that means?
Economic, and in addition to that, right, what I saw from your YouTubes, which is amazingly funny and creative and all cute, you make things yang agak-agak mungkin scientific to be very communicative gitu ya. Dan I like maybe in your response to Adele, you can talk a little bit about your martabak.
Sure, happy to.
Which I love martabak. So that's why I'm like, oh my god, I love this. Go for it.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I think mungkin background sedikit ya kenapa isu environment juga that becomes my focus. So basically, I was born in 1992, right? Just a few years after the Kyoto Protocol was signed. So it's jadi untuk yang baru dengar Kyoto Protocol itu basically is the first time countries around the world got together and admit that there is a climate crisis issue, or at that time they call it climate change gitu kan. So I feel like bahkan dari muda, I was born to this reality where climate change is already part of our world gitu kan. So like growing up, I got exposed more and more about it. Nah tapi what I realized quite immediately is orang-orang environmentalist itu ngobrolnya sama orang-orang environmentalist juga. So there's a lot of preaching to the choir gitu kan. People who love nature, people who love outdoor activities atau love animals itu biasanya emang drawn into climate change atau isu-isu lingkungan gitu. Dan sementara sebenarnya bukan unfortunately sih, realitasnya adalah dunia ini di shape dan di move by oleh para ahli financial, ahli bisnis, ahli ekonomi gitu kan. The economy is shaping how we consume things, how we impact the environment gitu. So I feel jadi awal-awal tuh aku sempat kerja buat LSM lingkungan justru gitu kan. And that's when I realized kayak kok kita ngobrolnya kalau bikin acara-acara
sama dia
launching initiative sama dia
orang-orang
lagi
yang udah bertobat
udah bertobat gitu kan. Sementara orang yang lebih fokus ke pertumbuhan ekonomi, kayak mindsetnya termasuk misalnya dalam konteks pandemi mikirnya tuh kita harus create jobs, kita harus dorong ekonomi, ya ngumpulnya juga sendiri gitu kan. So these are like two worlds that should be merged atau at least kayak harus ngobrol ke satu sama lain. So that's when I realized this was actually before I went for masters gitu. Jadi kayak I realized kayak kenapa ini ngomongnya masing-masing. Change cannot happen until they talk to each other gitu kan. So that's why coming back in. Jadi so I went to Harvard and then I studied public policy and how a big part of public policy is actually stakeholders management, right? Kayak actually getting stakeholders to talk to each other, mobilizing resources, all of that. I'm sure you already, you're part of, this whole thing as well. Nah, tapi jadinya pas balik, so I realized kayak I cannot, brand myself or I cannot re-enter as an environmentalist lagi. Karena I don't think that's gonna change anything. Karena I'll keep talking to the same people again gitu kan. So that's when I realized kayak I think I should be a green person in a brown environment.
Okay, I love that.
Instead of going back to the green yang udah green anyway. Just kayak kalau bahasa Indonesia apa sih kayak
atas apa itu?
Garam di lautan gitu ya. Kayak laut udah asin gitu kan. Laut udah asin, I won't make any change gitu. Nah, that's why I think about kayak apa ya institusi ekonomi yang where I can actually contribute, I can bring this climate change perspectives, environmental perspectives into what they're doing gitu. Jadi when we talk about apa ya simpelnya kalau ekonomi mungkin kalau kebijakan itu kayak subsidi atau misalnya government spending atau investment, you know, we'll talk about that later I'm sure. Terus kayak industri finansial gitu kan, kayak how can we think about mainstreaming this environmental concerns di dunia yang itu. So that's why I got some offers dari kayak institusi organisasi lingkungan lagi when I got back that same month. Tapi
so you also figuring it out at that moment.
I was figuring it out kayak what do I want to do next gitu. Tapi then dengan keteguhan hati, meskipun I know that that's my comfort zone, you know, kayak it's my people, kayak they all care about this issue. Tapi then I took the less
less popular.
It's popular for the economists, but it's less popular for the
environmentalists. Yes.
So that's why I went to join the World Bank, gitu, and I joined their macroeconomics team, who are doing misalnya tiap 3 bulan tuh kita punya report ekonomi kayak how the economy is doing, how's growth, how's jobs gitu-gitu kan. Dan normally literally jadi kadang-kadang tuh bukan orang ekonominya apa ya jahat, selama ini kan kita mikir kayak orang ekonominya tuh gak peduli lingkungan atau gimana, tapi kadang-kadang it's kayak basic emang gak terpapar aja sama isunya or how they should be thinking about it, right? So
awareness, jadi di antara policy or economist ya di policy makingnya yang mau disambungin sama policy dari lingkungan.
Betul banget. Dan jadi what I realized then when I joined the macroeconomics team at that time kayak I can be really useful jadinya karena they ask a lot of things kayak sebenarnya bahkan di awal-awal mereka misalnya nggak bisa bedain some terms related to environment lah. It's fine. I don't kayak I appreciate that they want to learn more, right? Gitu-gitu. Jadi that's why I want to become economic storyteller of the environment and going to the martabak economy thing. So one of the issues that is kayak kenapa ekonom itu kurang aware sama isu lingkungan adalah sebenarnya kayak for generations kan sebenarnya ekonomi itu belajar ilmu ekonomi dari mana sih gitu, dari buku pelajaran ekonomi, right? Kalau di Indonesia mungkin lulusan FEB UI gitu atau UGM itu kan kayak ekonom pintar-pintar, dan mereka semua belajar dari buku buku apa sih sebetulnya, buku referensi yang sama gitu kan, kayak ManQ atau kayak the supply
demand. That's the first thing I learned about the economy. What is demand, what is supply?
Dan kita cenderung mikirin ekonomi itu cuma dalam kerangka sempit aja, maksudnya transaksi supply and demand and that's it. How do you maximize it, how you redistribute it gitu. Tapi sebenarnya ini semua kan terjadi dalam konteks realitas juga gitu kan, kayak what is the bigger picture gitu.
The planet which is
exactly. Jadi kayak kita nggak cuma in a vacuum, we're not transacting in vacuum gitu kan. So I came across this professor at Oxford namanya Kate Raworth, right? So she come up with the term donut economics gitu, yang basically trying to reframe pelajaran-pelajaran ekonomi yang diajarin ke anak-anak undergrad dan sampai PhD gitu, so that it is placed in a more contextualized way, bahwa ada namanya ceiling environment. Jadi kalau di donat kayak bagian luar donatnya,
ring luar ya itu.
Yes, ring luarnya, dan ring dalamnya which is equity basically. Jadi kayak social welfare gitu. Jadi kayak gak ada gunanya ekonomi tumbuh tapi banyak orang miskin, banyak orang gak punya akses kesehatan, pendidikan, and so on gitu. Nah, karena donat itu adalah makanan asing, gak bercanda. Tapi maksudnya kayak donat dia bisa sih, tapi I feel like martabak kayaknya lebih relatable deh.
Ada little layers ya,
benar. Ada batas bawah dan ada batas atas kan. Ini pasti Kate Raworth gak tahu martabak.
Lebih cocok kali ya.
Dan memang martabak itu kan tengahnya yang bikin itu enak kan.
Exactly.
Dan itu kan the point of harmony sebenarnya, ketika ekonomi yang conscious lingkungan. Atau lingkungan yang juga paham secara ekonomi juga nggak bisa terlalu idealistis gitu kan. So that's the beauty in the harmony, which is rasa itu kalau my
I love your interpretation. That's a beautiful interpretation.
No. I saw martabak, pinter banget sih. Terus I was like, I love martabak. Oh my god, that's a simple pleasure. But I like the coklat and kacang, right? I mean, if you have coklat and kacang together too, say coklat dan kacang ketemu di tengah gitu. Ekonomi sama environment. So Cheese doesn't say that much,
Yes.
but the chocolate one says more. That's just my
I like
point.
the chocolate one too. My husband likes the cheese one, but
Oh yeah.
Tapi yes, I think the synergy of the different ingredients
Yeah.
kan, because for the longest time people pikir the environment sama the economy itu bertolak belakang,
exactly.
right? It's different incentives. Tapi you're here to say enggak, to make the economy grow to its optimum, kita harus watch out for this balance gitu,
Exactly.
the upper and lower limit.
Karena kayak nggak ada gunanya kita tumbuh terus, but then if you know everything crumbles down, the ecosystem crumbles down, kita nggak punya air bersih, kita nggak punya udara bersih gitu. Terus ekonominya mau terjadi di mana gitu, di dunia mana? It's in this planet.
Bener banget sih, pas high school kan I started learning econ di high school, and then I actually majored in economics and development studies gitu. Emang bener, every single textbook pasti you're taught that everything is in isolation, in apa sih, vacuum, ceteris paribus kan.
Yes,
Dulu I didn't
exactly.
write those words in exam di dot points, tapi kan in this world nggak mungkin ceteris paribus everything in equilibrium kan, everything without any external factors. Putting
So
theories.
you're the student that Kate Raworth was talking about in her book basically, right? Karena dia pakai contoh pokoknya ada mahasiswanya gini yang kayak ya itu tadi sebenarnya ceteris paribus is not realistic at all. The world is not ceteris paribus gitu kan.
Tapi that means you started your love for environment because you grew up in a climate aja ada Kyoto Protocol. Tapi banyak banget yang maybe grew up, my brother, he was born 95 gitu. Was there something, like, and I don't think he's that aware tentang, like, is there like maybe a life instance atau dari kecil observations aja?
Apa, is it your parents, your
Interesting.
auntie, your grandma has been infiltrating
Because
your
I wish
mind?
at least semua anak yang born 92 harusnya became as environmentally kan enggak lah. Yeah, I just like want to see where your passion comes from sih intinya. That's the inti of the question.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you the same question after this because I want to know your perspective. But for me, maybe reflecting back, I think it's so it's interesting that you mentioned about parenting, right? I think it's so one of the biggest thing is parenting actually. Tapi sebenarnya bukan lingkungan aja, tapi lebih ke efisiensi.
Interesting.
So my dad is not a military guy, but his way of parenting us itu sangat-sangat
otoritatif.
Nggak otoritatif, lumayan demokratis, tapi sangat efisien. Jadi dia suka kayak misalnya harus jam, misalnya kayak kita harus berangkat jam segini harus tepat waktu kayak gitu. And then tapi yang dia suka maximizing efficiency itu kayak misalnya if we have 5 different errands atau misalnya kayak hari Minggu kita mau jalan, kalau macet harus cari jalan yang nggak macet, atau kalau misalnya
so you save a bit of time bisa ngapain gitu.
Atau it's not worth it misalnya akhirnya. Jadi dari awal tuh udah lumayan ekonomi, maksudnya everything ekonomi sebenarnya tentang resource, tentang resource efficiency gitu kan. Jadi it was instilled very early, I think throughout everything. Jadi bahkan dalam my personal decisions, maksudnya financial decisions and whatnot itu juga lumayan berusaha efisien. Excuse me. Nah, abis itu, I think then it just extends gitu. Karena sebenarnya environmental economics is also about efficiency. Salah banget kalau it's about tree hugging aja gitu kan. It's not about tree hugging. Tapi if you can, for example, if you can, grow the economy while also not polluting the air gitu, then choose renewable energy options misalnya gitu kan. Dan juga maksudnya selama ini misalnya kita pakai pembangkit batu bara atau pilihan-pilihan yang kurang ramah lingkungan itu karena dianggap murah gitu kan. Tapi sebenarnya itu kan misrepresented gitu.
Iya, murahnya sekarang, bayarnya belakangan.
Exactly. Dan murah buat siapa gitu. Jadi bisa jadi murah buat pemerintah karena bangun PLTU-nya lebih rendah atau murah untuk perusahaan. Tapi sebenarnya mahal untuk komunitas yang tinggal di sekitar pembangkit dan sering ke rumah sakit karena sakit paru-paru misalnya gitu. So there's a lot of these perspectives yang selama ini dalam penjelasan ekonomi itu kurang komprehensif gitu. Nah tapi in terms of my passion for it, I think came from tadi my dad who's very efficient. Nah tapi sebenarnya lumayan sering diajakin ke hutan itu by my mom juga gitu, because she's a pegawai BUMN middle class yang kerja di salah satu ekoturisme perusahaan BUMN ekoturisme gitu. Jadi kita kadang-kadang diajak jalan-jalan juga, tapi I'm not much of an outdoor, I'm very introverted. So I'm not much of like hutan person.
Same. Oh my goodness, I like to be indoor, pakai AC.
Exactly. So I think it's more of the efficiency story than the hutan. Meskipun I love it, tapi kayak I'm not super, tau kan yang suka kayak aktivitas ekstrim,
outdoor gitu-gitu
apa gitu. How
Very
about
interesting.
you?
Ini pertama kali ya langsung ditembak juga.
What's your passion and like
Yeah,
maybe
I
does
think-
this environmental issue come to mind as well?
I think cerita kita rada mirip ya, very influenced by my parents. So aku mungkin a little bit about me now. I'm obviously in YCAP juga kan, working in YCAP, passionate about education, about girls empowerment, dan juga I'm running my own girl community namanya Rahasia Gadis. So for the longest time, I've always known sih I'm really interested in like giving more opportunities to people gitu. Tapi also as I learn more about like baca buku dan juga nonton documentaries, awareness aja tentang the environment. Makanya di YCAP aku selalu Mom, kita harus ada go green policy and so on. Tapi I think back a lot sih, kenapa ya, why? Because people ask me lah, why are you so sure? Because like after I graduated from university, aku tipenya kayak enggak, I wanna work in a place yang align sama my passion gitu kan. Terus people kayak enggak lah, deh lu santai aja gitu, just like work the corporate life for a while. But I was very convicted. I'm like, no, I think it's a gift to know your passion early on.
Definitely.
Jadinya when I look back, I think it's because I see my mom kan dari kecil itu udah ajarin aja to be more aware, dan juga udah bawa ke lapangan ketemu ibu-ibu. Jadi ada awareness aja that like I'm very privileged gitu in this world, and you can actually change someone's life through a program or through even visiting them. So my mom represents like the social sphere gitu kan. Terus my dad is on the other extreme gitu. He's in the more financial markets, in the business, tapi he has a very generous heart. Terus dia aku lihat kayak their marriage of working together, seeing me as their middle child lagi, aku merasa aja kayak, oh, I'm the epitome of their marriage gitu kan, taking social world sama business, dimana aku gabungin tentang social entrepreneurship juga kan. Dan aku juga selalu merasa I'm the middle child for a reason, gara-gara aku merasa I'm always in the position of partnerships gitu. That's why I love cross-sectoral partnerships, antara government, antara private, antara public sama non-profit gitu. Dan di sana lah I think it's both nature sama nurture kali ya. Ada a sense, I don't know why I love what I love, but I think I can like sort of pinpoint life points in my life lah gitu.
Kebetulan cewek middle child, 2 brothers.
Iya.
Martabak banget ceritanya. Tapi
That's
no,
perfect,
what Adele said something about the awakening. Sebenarnya she awakens me into economic empowerment. She was 12, right? Yeah, waktu grade 6. Brought me into this microfinance gitu kan, dimana dia waktu itu lagi mau bikin sama teman-temannya 5-6 little girls gitu ke desa Leles, not far from here, to understand how microfinance is actually done by bank and non-bank. Coba deh, I don't know where he got the idea. I got home from a long haul trip, and then I was like jet lag, but then Mom, it's your turn to chaperone us gitu, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? We've heard about
when she was 12.
Wow.
I was like googling gara-gara no, basically kan kayak di kelas 6 kan ada project gitu, kayak you have to do a community project. And I bilang, I came to my grade 6 teacher, I inget banget, Miss Joanna, I know exactly what I do for my grade 6 project. I want to end poverty gitu. Terus she looked at me and she was like, Adele, kamu gak tahu poverty is so complex. Emang Google more deh, Google more about poverty. So I did, ini zaman-zaman Google, terus stumbled upon microfinance. Pas banget momentumnya 10 years ago kan, Muhammad Yunus was on the rise.
Nobel.
Iya.
I remember. So anyway,
That was 10 years
YCAP
ago.
was actually satu dekade lah kira-kira ya. So we have been in the education for the underprivileged, rumah belajar dan lain-lain. Terus kayaknya nih anak-anak kan udah putus sekolah masuk ke rumah belajar. Kenapa di rumah belajar yang hampir nggak bayar 10.000 sebulan tanpa uang pangkal, kok putus juga? Masalahnya bukan di sekolah gratisnya, ongkos sama makan itu tetap harus disangonin gitu kan. Jadi masalahnya ekonomi lagi. So this has been back and forth until she brought me to that reality that day. You've heard about poverty, you've heard about Muhammad Yunus, but when you face to face with reality of poverty, it changed your life. You know, so I was there. They were taking notes. I was like, oh my God. And I thought at that point of mine, it was like a epitome, like oh my God, this is it. Probably kita harus menstabilkan ekonomi dari murid-murid kita, baru dia bisa sekolah dong. Nah ini makanya nih, the marriage between education, lo try to solve the problem of education, kan kemiskinan. Akarnya tuh kemiskinan gitu, 70-80%. Ya kan, those who drop out of school karena memang cannot afford to go to school, right? So this is pre-COVID story tentunya. Dan I think what you marriage was actually you talk about poverty reduction. Dia kan as one of mungkin leverage untuk menuju kepada environment yang lebih baik. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. Karena you see, ekonomi ya, pendidikan ya, sekarang environment juga ada linkages-nya, which I thought this is such an awakening for me when I read a brief and I heard your talk gitu ya. I thought, wow, this is something that we definitely can collaborate. Karena I think through that reduction of eradication, maybe our word, can we eradicate that? or reducing that poverty, you can actually create a better world. So I love that harmony.
Ya kan? Kan ada risetnya Semeru baru-baru ini yang basically showing that I forgot the exact statistics, tapi basically children who grow up or young persons who grow up in a poor households, 85% lebih likely to stay poor. And so even when we're talking about education, jadi part of extended explanation adalah even when we try to push for education and so on, sebenarnya ketika emang mereka datangnya awalnya dari poor households, ya tadi masalahnya kayak tetap nggak bisa ke sekolah atau tetap nggak bisa segala macam itu kan. So there's a lot of this kind of very structural issues yang sebenarnya ending poverty is a first step to it gitu kan. Karena sebenarnya juga kalau ngomongin economic growth dan segala macam, kita tuh grow buat siapa sih gitu kan. Kayak the idea of growing kan sebenarnya expanding the economic pie, harusnya supaya lebih banyak orang
inklusif, supaya lebih inklusif.
Betul,
tapi kejadiannya
the idea of growing it supaya orang yang tadinya nggak bisa punya pendapatan jadi bisa punya pendapatan gitu. Tapi salah banget dan it becomes very immoral when the economy is growing tapi kesenjangannya malah makin lebar. Artinya kan pie-nya tuh membesar tapi sebenarnya makan
buat siapa gitu.
Jadi how do you grow the economy without leaving people behind seharusnya? Gimana tuh caranya? Isn't that
ini kayak diskusi berpuluh-puluh dekade. Tapi I think so when you say end poverty, right? I think that's really the main goal meskipun kita ngomongin SDGs, kita punya
number one, no poverty.
Number one
kan?
is and poverty, right? I think there's of course a lot of dimensions to it. I think people try to solve it with their different theories of change. Ada yang ngerasa poverty itu di end lewat education karena misalnya kalau misalnya orang semakin pintar berarti opportunity buat dia semakin terbuka and therefore dia bisa get better income dan seterusnya. Itu kan satu theory of change that has been tested and as you mentioned earlier kayak sebenarnya mungkin ada masalah yang lebih underlying lagi gitu. Others have moved on to kayak those kind of programs dan think about sebenarnya dalam konteks industri 4.0 juga mungkin I don't know if this becomes to ini tapi misalnya basically cash transfer and universal basic income gitu. Kayak kita berusaha menciptakan dunia yang kayak gini, but like really what they need once they have cash, they know what to do with the cash. They can better their lives, they can get education, get health, get
masih kontrol banget, benar.
Tapi
gitu.
the thing is getting the cashnya is the problem.
Where do we get the cash gitu kan?
Well, in this days kayaknya bisa printing aja kali ya di pandemi suddenly everybody print their money and it's perfectly fine.
New monetary theory. Sebenarnya maksudnya akhirnya ini juga ada banyak theory of change ya in terms of kayak getting cash gitu kan.
Benar.
Let's say mungkin social justice warriors
approach,
atau yang relatif lebih redistributive approach-nya gitu kan, misalnya believes in basically taxing the billionaires gitu. That's
itu Berkeley banget tuh.
Iya gitu, maksudnya kayak
anti kapitalis kalau ini.
Iya, maksudnya maksudnya we're not against people being rich,
wealth,
right? Karena of course they create jobs gitu kayak
innovation, creativity, they be rewarded for it.
Exactly. So we need that. Tapi kayak at what level? Balik lagi tadi ke optimisasi resource, right? Kayak should we let people to have $10 billion, $100 billion gitu? After which kayak sebenarnya itu udah bukan cuma tentang letting people become rich, tapi udah maksudnya sebenarnya bisa dipakai untuk bantuin yang di bawah gitu kan misalnya. Jadi kayak it's not. I think the media tends to portray this as kayak ini kayak misalnya orang-orang sosialis yang nggak suka orang kaya gitu kayak I don't think it's that simple kayak I think again kayak tadi innovation dan jobs dan segala macam bisa di-create lewat the investments that come from the wealthy tapi how do you redistribute that in a way that is fair gitu kan. And I know that a lot of let's say billionaires actually do have social programs, punya yayasan dan redistribute, and that's great, right? But I think it's about kayak at what scale, how do we speed up the scale,
Iya,
atau
benar.
kayak how do we...
Masalahnya they need to give more. That's the
Yes.
thing. Philanthropist ditotalin se-Amerika dibanding dengan mereka punya net worth itu masih 0.0
Exactly.
something. Sorry ya, nggak nyampe 2,2 zakat, nggak sampai apa lagi kita punya perpuluhan. Jauh, jadi not even single digit. Artinya everybody have to give more.
Yes.
Which is in a sense that to the point yang I've been in a talk show gitu ya.
Yeah.
I was in front of ini di AVPN, remember 2019 yang environmentalist, climate change lah ya. Dia bilang, Vera, whatever you do, you're doing great. Maksudnya eradicating poverty through education and all of that. Tapi kalau people don't invest in $1 trillion climate change, everything that you do nggak ada gunanya. Katanya, karena semua bakal mati. Ya gue bilang, tapi sampai Dian mati kan ya, dia masih perlu makan ya gitu.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I
that's
think
an
so.
extreme.
Yeah.
I thought I was crucified in that panel karena I thought, ternyata yang climate change yang aktivis yang to that extreme sampai dia merasa dia yang paling penting, yang lain tuh nggak penting. Sementara orang nyambung hidup kan perlu makan juga ya, perlu tetap diedukasi kan ya. You're talking about planetary size, I'm talking about community size gitu. Jadi wow.
Exactly.
Nah itu tuh mempertemukan itu karena that was the point when I got crucified, I think. But you're actually thinking it together, like poverty reduction, ada hubungannya sama sebenarnya kemajuan environment atau a better planet gitu.
Because they're not mutually exclusive.
Iya, tapi itu banyak yang nggak merasa begitu. So maybe talk a little bit for our audience gitu untuk tahu tuh gimana sih connecting that poverty reduction dengan climate change gitu.
Yeah. So ini sebenarnya in terms of talking about poverty, first of all I think I want to start with just saying that to some extent yang tadi orang itu bilang ada benernya in a sense bahwa climate change will have disproportionate impact on the poor, right? The impact of climate change is not the same to all of us.
Yeah, benar.
Agak mirip kayak pandemi, right? Kayak ada yang bilang kayak, oh kita semua di kapal
atau
yang
vaksin
sama.
It's not the same.
Pas pandemi di awal.
We're in the same storm tapi different boats.
Different boats.
There's some people yang pakai
ada yang kayak gede banget kapalnya gitu kan. So in terms of climate change misalnya, we've already been seeing, right, this bencana banjir yang frekuensi dan intensitasnya meningkat. Terus musim kemarau yang lebih panjang, yang lebih berdampak pada petani-petani yang bahkan income-nya juga sangat-sangat rendah gitu ya. Mayoritas orang, kalau keluarga prasejahtera di Indonesia itu sebenarnya datang dari keluarga petani gitu kan. Terus ya tadi kalau ngomongin banjir misalnya, orang-orang yang tinggal di daerah yang lebih prone terhadap banjir adalah keluarga prasejahtera. Dan bisa dibilang misalnya kalau misalnya habis kebanjiran nggak semudah itu untuk keluarga prasejahtera recover. Misalnya kalau simple banget ya, sofanya kebanjiran nggak bisa langsung beli gitu. Sementara kalau middle class mungkin punya kartu kredit terus bisa langsung beli lagi, atau iklan IKEA, diskon Fabelio anyway. Dan sama dengan hal lain gitu ya, nanti sea level rise and a lot of this climate crisis.
Jadi impact
right?
ya on those yang poor lebih besar sehingga kita meningkatkan economic growth sehingga mereka juga terselamatkan.
Nah iya, sebenarnya dengan kita ending poverty secara tidak langsung kita meningkatkan ketahanan keluarga prasejahtera ini terhadap krisis iklim gitu, karena mereka punya resource lebih misalnya apakah itu untuk pindah pertama untuk produksi pertanian gitu, supaya mereka bisa produksi tani yang lebih tahan terhadap iklim. Jadi misalnya dari pilihan bibit, sistem irigasi. Kan sekarang tuh Indonesia banyak yang petani-petaninya masih berbasis atau bergantung pada hujan. Ya, jadi kalau misalnya udah krisis iklim itu berdoa. Jadi kalau udah krisis iklim, bayangin gitu dengan pattern hujan yang sangat berubah ke musim kemarau, itu udah terdampak semua. If we can empower them tadi ya maksudnya bisa eradicating poverty dengan bantu mereka lebih tahan iklim, itu kan sebenarnya satu jalur gitu. Jadi itu ya. Yang kedua sebenarnya, nah yang ini yang agak sedikit lebih kompleks karena kalau ngomongin konsumsi, jadi sebenarnya krisis iklim juga kan dari kayak konsumsi kita ya, apakah itu energi atau produk atau segala macam.
Plastik lah.
Nah plastik simpelnya gitu. Nah sebenarnya kalau dalam konteks konsumsi, memang justru kalau keluarga prasejahtera ini tidak berkontribusi sebesar misalnya middle class atau upper middle class kan gitu, karena yang banyak belanja dari e-commerce termasuk saya
tapi
pasti lebih
get the
besar dari middle class, tapi yang lebih terdampak adalah keluarga prasejahtera tadi. Nah jadi I think this is why a lot of people misalnya AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez atau Greta Thunberg, a lot of this climate aktivis bisa dibilang sebenarnya menjadikan ini isu climate justice.
I like
So
that
it's
word.
never just environment gitu,
Yeah.
tapi this is about protecting the poor gitu. Nah, tapi yang mungkin kompleks Mbak Vero dan Adele adalah misalnya when we talk about the kind of jobs that will disappear because we have to transition, right?
Yeah.
Because we have to change the economy. And people are talking about the coal miners misalnya gitu yang akan paling terdampak. Atau ya tipe-tipe pekerjaan tradisional yang misalnya di energi kotor atau eksploitatif ke lingkungan gitu kan. Nah, what about them gitu? Nah, unfortunately this argument itu di misuse sama kelompok yang lebih eksploitatif sebagai kayak that's why we have to keep burning coal gitu kan, to protect these people gitu. Padahal sebenarnya bukan kayak gitu, tapi frameworknya sekarang adalah it's about just transition gitu. Jadi transisi yang adil gitu. Jadi gimana caranya just misalnya ketika kita misalnya mau introduce carbon tax kalau di beberapa negara ya, atau some kind of new sumber revenue dari pemerintah. Nah, itu dialokasiin buat balik lagi tadi cash transfer, bantuan langsung tunai untuk para coal miners, atau upskilling dan reskilling mereka ke tipe-tipe pekerjaan yang lebih ramah lingkungan, dan seterusnya gitu. So this is not about this is not an elitist issue that wants to leave the poor people behind, tapi justru it's about creating the solution that's inclusive dan justru lebih just untuk kelompok yang termarginalisasi.
I like that climate justice ya, karena kita juga
sama just transition.
Adele masuk tuh dia bicara soal educational justice gitu, karena memang
what is that?
Ya kayaknya dia menerjemahkan yang dilakukan oleh YCAP selama ini sebenarnya membawa keadilan untuk at the end of the day kan ekonomi, kesejahteraan gitu. Karena memang what we actually track is not just they're getting education, tapi setelah education ngapain, kemandirian. Makanya kita punya indeks kemandirian.
Educational justice more of the belief that every single person gitu, regardless of your income, your background, your race, your gender, deserves the right to have quality of education sih. Tapi I like the idea of just transition juga, karena I know that argument has been used over and over again. Ini kan tentang livelihoods of people gitu, to preserve their jobs. Tapi at the end of the day emang kita harus help them transition up aja for the long term.
Dan kayaknya kalau ngomongin education justice, I like what you said about gender element, karena kayaknya itu how much is that in Indonesia ini sih, maksudnya kayak the gender dimension, because I think when you talk about education, I don't know, in my mind I'm still thinking about
female girls left behind gitu.
Pernikahan dini
udah jadi
berhenti
19
SMA.
tahun itu masih menjadi half of the brides katanya of pernikahan anak-anak itu masih di bawah 19 tahun. Half of the registry in Indonesian registry. Itu ditulis tiap tahun tuh sama media massa ya. Dan I thought gila lu belum berubah loh. Masih setengah sampai majority. So that also kan a stumbling block ya. Kalau terlalu muda juga dikawinin. I mean kalau dia bisa married, dia punya anak lalu di sekolah lagi mah nggak apa-apa gitu ya. Dan ini kan values yang ditransfer mama gitu kan ke anak ya. Like you probably you have that background, Adele had that. Tapi those are the privilege in terms of passion and awareness and consciousness to the world gitu. Tapi what about them yang cuman urusannya survival kan, makan day by day gitu. Nah, I thought memang kalau kejadian YCAP dari cuman pendidikan sampai ke tiba-tiba pemberdayaan ekonomi, dan ini kan women nih, empowerment yang kita berdayakan ibu, itu memang with that story of Adele. So it's been like a journey for me as well, karena kalau tidak dibukakan celahnya ya kan, I wouldn't have, masih what you read beda loh sama when you actually there gitu to really feel it. And I guess so that's one of the leadership values that I learned gitu, bahwa kita harus punya keterbukaan dan juga flexibility, ya kan. Dan itu loh turun ke lapangannya itu, belusukannya itu jangan sampai hilang, karena that's pretty much, that's for me. I don't know, maybe you can talk a little bit about your leadership journey gitu, what shaped you and change probably you see yourself kind of a change person or something?
Yeah, actually I do have one story.
Okay.
Jadi this was lagi back in the days when I was an environmentalist. Terus kita riset ke satu daerah di Kalimantan untuk ngecek dampak dari sawit yang masuk ke daerah baru itu. Jadi intinya ada satu daerah yang sebenarnya tanah adat atau ada masyarakat adat yang tinggal di daerah sekitar tanah itu, dan harusnya untuk sebuah lahan di-convert jadi misalnya perkebunan itu butuh izin dari masyarakat adatnya gitu kan. Dan izinnya udah keluar gitu, but we were there kind of post setelah intervensinya gitu untuk lihat apakah emang kayak gimana sih dampaknya setelah sawit masuk gitu kan. Nah terus I'm not gonna talk about the research, tapi I wanted to talk about as part of that trip we were hosted di Desa Sungai Itik namanya. Jadi saat itu suku Dayak Iban kan mereka setahun sekali ada acara harvest gitu kan, kayak perayaan
festival gitu.
some kind of festival. Terus emang mereka biasanya hosting us di rumah panjang mereka yang panjang banget itu, and actually very nice. Nah terus at that time we were disuguhin gelas-gelas gitu, jadi semua orang udah megang gelas. From Jakarta aku cuma berdua gitu, terus sisanya memang temannya Bang Lawa, jadi yang berangkat bareng aku sana emang orang-orang lokal gitu. And then the host came in terus kayak nuangin air gitu kan ke gelas semua orang gitu. Terus I was ready to actually drink. Tapi semua orang berdiri. Literally semua orang. Terus gak ada queue apa-apa. Gak ada yang kayak berdiri semua. Gak ada. Tapi kayak semua orang berdiri aja. And then they were lining up next to the window gitu. Terus kayak this is so kayak ngebingungin banget. Terus they all buang airnya over the window gitu semuanya. It was actually air tuak. I said air, tapi basically air tuak dibuang ke tanah. Terus kayak what are we doing? Terus kayak udah nggak apa-apa. Nona dia dipanggil Nona, ikut aja gitu. And then I did it. And then I asked again kayak kenapa sih kayak gitu? Iya, soalnya kalau di masyarakat kita percaya bahwa sebelum memberi makan atau minum manusia, kita harus memberi makan dan minum tanah.
Oh wow.
Gitu. Jadi and then it's just one window, tapi sebenarnya pas abis ngobrol-ngobrol lagi mereka juga punya aturan-aturan kayak misalnya kalau buat nebang mau ngambil kayu dari hutan itu ada maksimal per orang cuma 5 kayu or something. Jadi kayak ada batasan-batasannya, so there's time
local wisdom banget ini.
Local wisdom banget.
Turun-temurun.
Exactly. So there's a lot of
I love that.
I think at its core it's something spiritual. It's about kayak how do you feel enough?
Iya,
gitu kan, kayak cukup content dan kayak mengerti bahwa kita tuh ngambil dari bumi, kayak maksudnya ini tuh bukan hak dan ini bukan hak kita gitu kan, kayak you're actually it's like bumi giving to you, so you also have to think about it gitu. So that was one of the moments yang maksudnya selama ini I understand this whole kayak lingkungan as an issue, tapi this is the first time when I can feel it as a spiritual kayak awakening I guess, right? Karena kayak iya bener juga, kita tuh eksesif gitu sebenarnya. Kayak at its core our environmental problems itu karena kita terbiasa ngambil gitu
as
kan.
As if it is ours.
As if it's ours.
As ada like infinite juga, within is infinite amount.
That's the problem, right? If it's infinite, ya nggak apa-apa, ambil terus. But it's not, right? Gitu. So that was really beautiful, and it was I think my aha moment of kayak I think ini nggak cuma tentang cold issues aja, tapi juga you have to touch people's hearts so that they understand this is about kayak
dan orang yang maksudnya di pedalaman malah lebih
respectful,
arif dan lebih bijaksana ternyata
ya.
Oh my gosh, thank you for the story, sharing it. It's beautiful. I know it's spiritual journey for all of us to continue, doing what we do. And I think that's the fuel.
Because I think among the underlying, you go really, really deep of any environmental, social, economic problems, among is the problems in the human heart kan. Dimana kita mau exploit other people, exploit the environment, exploit, the world that we live. And kita ngelihat bahwa everything in our life tuh cuma titipan. We're here for a moment and we should take care of it gitu kan. And mindset itu sih yang mungkin needs to be infiltrated, bukan cuma di dunia ekonomi, tapi in different sectors of the environment. Terus aku suka banget karena pas I was in Berkeley, I took a class. It was a very hard class to get into. You have to be in your senior year to get it. Kelasnya Robert Reich. So he worked under many US presidents. He was the Ministry of Labor, and it was a class tentang income inequality gitu. kenapa in 1970s income inequalities are going really high gitu kan, ketidaksetaraannya, gapnya gitu. And we went through a whole semester 6 bulan loh, kayak class by class tentang problem solutions. Tapi at the very end, the last day of the class yang paling for me terkesan banget karena dia bilang, I went through 6 months of problems and solutions with all of you, but I only know one solution that lies in every single one of you. Dia bilang the solution to all environmental economic injustice in this world is to harnessing sama cultivating leaders, young leaders. Dia bilang leaders who can go through any pessimism of life, yang bisa drive change gitu. And that's why I know that your work juga di Think Policy kan untuk merangkul pemimpin muda gitu. Is that a realization you had? Aku kan realization di kelas kan, a realization that you had.
I love how you were telling that story and setting me up.
I know, a realization that you had.
Sebenarnya mau balik nanya itu sih, karena
invest in leaders
part
gitu.
of the IFL juga ya, waktu
back when.
zaman sama Iman
Iya, leadership is so important. Dulu saya kok kayak kelas leadership nih kan basa-basi doang, tapi the more I'm back in Jakarta, it's like that is what we need gitu, leaders who will push forward gitu.
Relentless young people for impact.
Yeah, so jadi part of the story of why akhirnya ngerjain Think Policy juga. Tapi of course there's a lot of other parts to it gitu ya. Adalah sama, jadi ada kelas juga waktu di Kennedy School, kelasnya Marshall Gantz. Don't you love him? Yeah, he's amazing, right?
I love him.
Yeah,
he's opa banget.
Opa aktivis.
Opa
yang marah-marah and like bisa mobilize people.
Kalau datang banyak fasilitator di kelas, tempel-tempel segala macam, itu wording amazing. I love him.
Yeah, and he's come up with this theory about kayak apa sih sebenarnya barriers to action gitu. Jadi kenapa sih nggak lebih banyak orang di hatinya tergerak atau mau melakukan sesuatu, right? So he come up with a formula out of his very decades of helping people to organize movements and things like that. Terus yang 5 ini basically kayak yang pertama itu inertia, so people just don't like change. Period, right? Kayak if you're comfortable, so, and that's part of the issue with environmental, maksudnya lifestyle juga gitu. Karena nggak mood, if you can just ini oversimplifying tapi sampah aja gitu ya, kayak kalau terbiasa buang aja gitu, sekarang harus pilah kan nggak convenient gitu kan. So inertia. Terus yang kedua itu feel of isolation gitu. Jadi you want to change something, you want to contribute, tapi you feel alone gitu. Kayak orang-orang sekitarku nggak ada yang peduli juga. Kayak ya udahlah, aku nggak usah lah. Kayak I shouldn't even try gitu, bother trying. Terus fear yang ketiga. Jadi kayak orang takut aja. Jadi kayak takut. Kalau di Twitter sekarang takut di cancel salah ngomong, SJW gitu-gitu kan, takut. And then I forgot the fourth one. This is a long list, tapi yang terakhir tuh kayak intinya kayak mentality yang nggak percaya diri, kayak nggak ngerasa bahwa
mereka bisa.
Aku bisa contribute gitu. Nah, what's nice is he also comes up with the solutions, I guess, to address the barriers gitu kan. Jadi kayak misalnya inertia itu sebenarnya apa yang bisa ngubah inertia itu, and this is quite mind blowing karena menurut aku kayak sebenarnya basic, tapi anger. So people need to be angry about the status quo. For them to feel that change is needed gitu.
Positive anger.
Exactly. Jadi maksudnya bukan angry yang sekedar kayak gitu kan. Tapi maksudnya in a sense kayak aware that there is an injustice, so that you feel angry about it, that something needs to change.
Enough to
gitu.
act.
Exactly. Karena nah ini kalau dihubungin sama apa ya, misalnya I don't know if you like dystopian novels gitu, tapi kayak salah satu yang aku suka ada novel fiksi of course gitu, tapi basically kayak how governments can keep their people quiet adalah by keeping them happy gitu kan. Kalau mereka nggak marah, mereka nggak bakal do something gitu kan.
Revolt.
I hope that's happening in Papua, but didn't.
Itu agak lebih kompleks. Itu marahnya bisa banyak dimensinya. Tapi itu jadi kayak people needs to be angry. Nah terus si self isolation ini basically solusinya solidarity. Maksudnya you feel connected, you know there are people like you who are trying, the us element gitu. Jadi kayak I have the courage untuk kayak actually gerak gitu, karena kita bareng-bareng. Nah tadi terus ada fear kan. Nah fear itu sebenarnya solusi lainnya adalah hopeful. Maksudnya kita harus juga dengan narasi lingkungan ini kan. Nah tadi yang the one who crucified you itu kan kadang-kadang fear mongering ya, maksudnya the environmental narrative itu sangat kayak climate change, it's doom, maksudnya basically kayak doomsday storyteller gitu kan.
Sampai
kayak,
you're so pessimistic
exactly,
tentang there's nothing can be done anyways, udah dipaksa gitu.
So people don't do anything if they're too afraid gitu. Nah, jadi justru harus ada message hope-nya juga bahwa there are technological innovations, there are you know green investments going on, impact investment. So there are things that bit by bit kayak creating a momentum gitu kan. Jadi harus ada message hopeful-nya. Terus yang terakhir tadi yang kayak rasa tidak percaya diri adalah kayak ngerasa bahwa every single one of us matters gitu. Maksudnya can contribute something. And that feeling tuh yang kadang-kadang highbrow activist itu suka kayak you have to do this perfectly baru lo kontributif gitu kan. Jadi kayak harus gini baru kayak boleh menyebut diri aktivis atau kayak harus sempurna gitu kan. Nah, justru you have to be inclusive, justru open the space, make people feel that they can contribute in no matter how small gitu. Nah, so coming from this framework gitu kayak kita mikir maksudnya sebenarnya enabling change di Indonesia itu bukan cuma butuh orang pintar aja gitu. We don't need everyone to go to Berkeley or Harvard and have this like technical solutions gitu. Karena sebenarnya udah banyak banget orang pintar yang punya technical solutions. But what happens di Indonesia tuh sebenarnya people are afraid, right? They're afraid. There a lot of young people in the system, young people working di kementerian, kerja buat anggota DPR, kerja buat all these like silent voices, right? Kayak people who are actually in the system and young and kayak punya aspirasi are afraid gitu. They're alone, they're fearful tadi, terlalu banyak inersia and so on and so forth. Jadi with Think Policy, sebenarnya kita nggak mau, maksudnya kayak organisasi riset atau think tank yang pintar tuh kan banyak gitu. Tapi the idea is you want to be that space for people to find courage, for people to find you know the liken of themselves. Kayak ini sama-sama orang-orang yang mau champion yang mau bawa perubahan di sistem mereka masing-masing, and empowering them with the tools that they would need to actually affect those change gitu. Jadi what we're thinking of sebenarnya kita pengen kerja sama, sekarang emang masih banyak fokus di kementerian-kementerian dan lembaga-lembaga di Jakarta, tapi juga kita mikirin ekosistem sih, so not only government agencies tapi juga private sector and NGO, tapi emang proporsinya lebih banyak orang muda yang kerja di kementerian. So part of our community itu orang muda yang kerja di maksudnya yang gede-gede mungkin kayak Bappenas, Kementerian Keuangan gitu, but also other ministries.
So they have like an environment, social group, social support.
Yes,
right. Tapi they want to create change.
Exactly.
Ini mirip banget sama
gitu
Spark.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe she can talk a little bit about Spark. Sama mirip-mirip anak-anak yang ini ide lahir dari to spark an impact untuk mulai dari mahasiswa waktu itu sampai sekarang anak-anak.
Nah, dan kita mikir demografi ini unik dan maksudnya sebenarnya bisa sangat toppling change gitu, karena mereka banyak yang ngerasa misalnya di organisasi mereka berada karena senioritas atau karena struktur birokrasi kan mereka masih muda. Jadi biasanya selalu ada senior yang emang lebih giving opportunities to young people, tapi ada juga yang kayak apa sih maksudnya kayak nggak terlalu dengerin
mengkerdilkan
gitu.
Mungkin juga pemikiran dan inovasi atau I don't know what. Yeah, I know it's hard. It's hard to try to change something within your division.
Yeah, exactly. So makanya tadi kayak how do you find courage, terus allies ya kan, kayak punya allies di kementerian dan supaya membridge sectoral ego gitu. Kayak a lot of bukan cuma environment ya, tapi semua isu pandemic segala macam itu butuh koordinasi antar kementerian. Tapi kalau kita ngomongin koordinasi tuh selalu di permukaan doang, kayak asal meeting satu kali atau apa. But we're thinking about kayak the kind of trust where you can call someone kayak ada di kementerian lain kayak kita teman-teman tim policy,
relationship.
Okay,
so is it mereka masuk as what, members atau what do you do like how do you attract them to be part of?
So we have several entry points. Let's say that the main one is actually our bootcamp gitu. Jadi Think Policy Bootcamp we call it, which is basically a mini Harvard Kennedy School.
So like all the modules and syllabus di adapt aja gitu ya.
We make it practical 3 bulan, sekitar 3 bulan. Ya lumayan. And
intense.
people
apa weekly datangnya?
Weekly, seminggu 2 kali, tapi ada banyak tugas, ada banyak refleksi, benar-benar itu. Karena how I feel, because I think you want to change people, right? It's hard.
Betul.
Changing people tuh nggak bisa webinar 2 jam.
Nggak bisa.
And there's too many webinar 2 jam, that doesn't actually change behavior.
No.
You can't change
This is like Spark
belief.
Academy.
You went to Berkeley and you
took 4 years,
Yeah, exactly. 4 years, and then you become whatever. You find your voice. You become more berani and segala macam gitu kan. Jadi kayak we try to create this space where people can speak up and voice up and connect and trust each other and segala macam selama 3 bulan itu, and then they become basically alumni gitu. Yang abis itu kita maintain lagi alumninya dan maksudnya
jadi network tersendiri gitu.
Exactly.
So you're doing the bootcamp setahun sekali, setahun 2 kali?
Setahun banyak kali. Jadi
banyak kali.
Banyak kali.
Berapa orang per angkatan?
So we're trying to scale this up, right? Karena basically kayak kita pengen create as many agents as possible di organisasi itu. Ini suka bikin orang nervous kalau dipikir kayak kita masukin agent ke dalam.
Infiltrasi.
Tapi basically maksudnya we want to build critical thinking tadi kayak courage, kayak problem solving mindset, leadership, all of those di semakin banyak kan. Nah, jadi awalnya kita pakai selection base gitu. Dan ini masih jalan juga yang selection base. But what happened is selalu tiap batch tuh kayak yang daftar mau hampir 1,000, tapi yang bisa diterima karena kita mau intensif cuma 30. Jadi kayak sehari 30 kan jarang banget kan. Dan kita keep 30 karena you need that kayak cohesion kayak biar
karena
kenal
harus
gitu
cohesionnya segitu.
Betul gitu. Nah, jadi sekarang model kita agak diubah. Jadi kayak we actually partner with misalnya Pemda atau organisasi pemerintahnya langsung untuk masuk ke organisasinya.
Mereka jadi master of trainer, terus mereka lakukan sendiri gitu ya.
Jadi kerja sama organisasinya, we provide the bootcamp dengan format yang mirip, maksudnya training critical thinking, leadership segala macam. Tapi instead of investing too much in the selection process yang bakal jadi lama, ini lebih
aja terserah deh lo
cepat dan nggak harus 3 bulan.
Misalnya IP-nya
lebih short.
ada IP-IP-an apa this is open source?
Jadi kita punya konten-konten yang open source. Jadi we actually have online academy dan namanya Think Policy Handbook. It's free. It's on our website thinkpolicy.id.
So Mbak Afu, it seems like you do so much. You have a full-time job di World Bank, ada Think Policy, dan juga your own YouTube page sama your husband gitu kan. How do you balance and have you ever burnt out? Mungkin tips buat anak muda yang kayak kita or everybody who's like always pushing kan.
Ambisius banget
because
gitu.
I love some of the and I love some of the
yeah.
advice you give to I read some of your articles juga bilang kayak for young people in their early 20s kayak lean into your fear kan and also place yourself in environments that will make you grow gitu.
Yeah.
Tapi how do you balance? You talk about balance of environment sama econ tapi balance our own life juga kan kayak being pushing hard and actually mungkin resting ataupun stepping into your fear tapi juga knowing your limits gitu. Personally pernah gak ngalamin itu tuh tension in your own life gitu bukan cuman
definitely. I think again to quote another class yang maybe you took his as well, Heifetz.
Jadi ketahuan anak-anaknya suka sekolah quoting kelas. They were like, there's no use in school. I learned so much in school di kelas gitu.
Banyak banget. One of the things that I really like dari kelasnya Prof Heifetz ini adalah kayak how do you separate between your self and your roles gitu. Jadi for a lot of young people, sometimes you internalize your roles such that you believe that that's yourself. Gitu.
So aku guilty sama itu deh.
Kayak you're an activist atau you're an SJ or you're a feminist. So you have to be angry at every single thing gitu kan. Kayak misalnya atau kayak misalnya you're whatever roles you're taking, right? Kayak kadang-kadang terlalu di-internalize sampai kayak every single time, maksudnya that's what's on your head gitu kayak maksudnya it's good, I think it's idealism gitu, tapi you can't move forward. It's not sustainable. Let's say,
absolutely.
You will kill yourself in a maksudnya sebagai analogi, maksudnya kayak you get too tired that you cannot continue gitu kan. Nah, what he says is basically kayak you separate between the roles that you're taking and know that you're kayak okay, this is the Afu that tries to build awareness around environmental issues, tapi this is me at home kayak just myself. Maksudnya kayak I'm entitled to take a break, to take care of myself, to pamper myself, to do things that I like, untuk binging Netflix.
Exactly.
Harus
because people, I think
Mom always says that to me. Tal, take a break gitu.
Because I think that's what the problem is actually separation the two roles, and then I think you have to be really honest with yourself.
Yeah.
It's that this is me right? And I'm okay, guilt free,
Yes.
to be yourself.
Guilt-free.
Yeah. Because I think now these
When
days,
you're not
That's a
working.
keyword because you tend to feel guilty for
because our
taking a
value
break.
isn't in our productivity kan.
Yes.
And I think now kayak we're blurring the idea. People think my life calling equates to our career. Life calling is a job gitu kan. Walaupun I think you are called to
true.
be X, tapi you're also called to be a sister. You're called to be a friend. You're called to be a wife. You're called to be a mother. You're called to be a daughter. And sometimes kita fokusnya cuma in our professional calling, tapi we
Yeah.
equate it with our life calling.
Yes.
No,
And
that's-
that lack of imbalance
Yeah, yeah.
actually leads us
I
to
love,
burning
I
out
love
gitu.
This.
Yes,
I love this. You put it
exactly.
into better
Exactly.
words
Iya.
than how I have been practicing. At least I've tried, gitu
Yeah,
kan.
yeah.
The separation of role and self.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's powerful.
It's important.
Thank you.
Yeah, because
Thank you.
otherwise you can't be there for the long haul. But we need you
Yeah,
for the long haul.
benar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very enlightenment. Talk. Really
Likewise,
enjoy
I love
this.
talking to both of you.